as America's chief agricultural negotiator, do you agree that bailing out Argentina while our own farmers are struggling is a betrayal of the American soybean farmer?
Thank you, Senator Warren. In our negotiations for agreements on reciprocal trade, soy is a top commodity that we are negotiating around the world to ensure that countries around the world have access to high-quality U.S. soybeans.
So, I appreciate that. I don't mean to interrupt, but we're going to be limited on our time here. It's an easy question. I'm asking you if you agree with American soybean farmers themselves, whose interests you are supposed to represent in this job.
A sharp exchange unfolded in the Senate as Elizabeth Warren confronted one of President Trump's key trade nominees with a question that cut straight to the heart of rural America. Who exactly is this administration fighting for? If you want clear, no-nonsense explanations of moments like this and why they matter for everyday Americans, make sure you subscribe so you do not miss our coverage.
Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So President Trump promised that he would lower costs for American families on day one. Those were his words, on day one. Instead, he is prioritizing a $40 billion bailout for Argentina and the wealthy hedge fund investors, starting with $20 billion in taxpayer money and $20 billion more fronted by U.S. banks, potentially guaranteed by taxpayers, and who knows, maybe even more money going to Argentina. Now, this bailout came after Argentina cut a deal with China that directly undercuts American soybean farmers. Under Trump, farm bankruptcies are surging, crop prices are falling, and Trump's chaotic tariffs are making fertilizer and farming equipment more expensive. But instead of helping American farmers who clearly need that help, he's helping the farmers in Argentina. So don't take my word for it. Listen to the farmers themselves. One soybean farmer said, quote, "I turn on the news and we gave $20 billion of taxpayer money to Argentina, my competition." The American Soybean Association said plainly, quote, "The frustration is overwhelming." So, Dr. Callahan, you're being nominated to serve as America's chief agricultural negotiator. Do you agree that bailing out Argentina while our own farmers are struggling is a betrayal of the American soybean farmer?
Thank you, Senator Warren. In our negotiations for agreements on reciprocal trade, soy is a top commodity that we are negotiating around the world to ensure that countries around the world have access to high-quality U.S. soybeans.
So, I appreciate that. I don't mean to interrupt, but we're going to be limited on our time here. It's an easy question. I'm asking you if you agree with American soybean farmers themselves, whose interests you are supposed to represent in this job, and they are ringing the alarm about their own economic livelihoods. Surging farm bankruptcies, soybean farmers losing access to key markets when we prop up these competitors. So I just don't understand. If you can't acknowledge that there is a problem here, how do you represent American soybean farmers?
Thank you, Senator Warren. And in my role as the Assistant USTR for Agriculture, and if confirmed as the Chief Agricultural Negotiator, I will have the interests of U.S. farmers and ranchers.
Can you acknowledge that there is a serious problem right now for those soybean farmers?
Our current negotiations are making good on the promise to U.S. farmers and ranchers to reset our trade relationships.
So I'm sorry, you can't even acknowledge that our American soybean farmers are having trouble right now? Is that what you're telling me?
Oh,
you're just going to sit there and say, nope, we're working.
China's weaponization of agriculture has absolutely harmed U.S. soybean farmers, and
so farmers are in trouble because China quit buying from them. Because who is China buying from right now? What's that country?
China is purchasing from every country
is China buying
except the United
soybeans from
States
right now? What's the name of that country?
China
Dr.
purchases
Callahan,
many
what is the name of the
soybeans
country
from Brazil.
China is buying soybeans from right now?
China is purchasing Latin American soybeans. As
Latin
of this
American?
morning,
What is
they
the
are
name of the
purchasing U.S.
particular
soybeans as well.
country they are buying soybeans from? If you can't answer that question, I don't see how you can represent American soybean farmers. Dr. Callahan, let me ask you about another constituency that you supposedly would be fighting for, and that's cattle ranchers. So Trump bails out Argentina. He undercuts American soybean farmers. What's next? He announces he's raising the quota for Argentine beef imports. Now, importing Argentine beef will devastate small ranchers, but with the big four meatpacking corporations controlling the market, consumers are not going to see prices that are any lower. So once again, Trump is helping Argentina while American ranchers and American consumers pay the price. One Illinois cattle producer called Trump's plan, quote, a betrayal of the American rancher, and said Trump is, quote, acting more like president of Argentina than president of the United States. So, Dr. Callahan, do you agree with the American cattle ranchers that importing beef from Argentina will harm them, particularly the small ranchers?
Thank you, Senator Warren. I am in close communication with U.S. cattlemen.
We're out of time. Can you just give me a yes or no on that? Do you understand that this will harm our small ranchers?
Thank you, Senator. I'm confident that the cattlemen understand
Could I
that
just have a yes
we
or
are
no?
negotiating
We're out
for
of
their
time here.
interests
Okay.
to open markets for U.S. beef.
Okay.
She just came back.
Well, obviously I can't get an answer to that.
Well, thank you very much.
Warren opened by reminding the room of a promise President Trump made repeatedly on the campaign trail that he would lower costs for American families on day one. Instead, she argued, the administration is prioritizing a massive financial rescue package for Argentina, a country that directly competes with U.S. farmers. At the center of Warren's concern is a reported $40 billion bailout for Argentina. $20 billion would come directly from U.S. taxpayer funds, with another $20 billion fronted by American banks and potentially backed by taxpayer guarantees. Warren warned that this number could grow even larger, exposing U.S. taxpayers to even more risk. Subscribe now if you want ongoing coverage that follows where the money actually goes. Warren explained why this issue hits particularly close to home for American soybean farmers. Argentina recently struck a deal with China that boosts Argentine soybean exports, undercutting U.S. farmers who have historically relied on Chinese markets. At the same time, Warren noted, American farmers are facing rising bankruptcies, falling crop prices, and higher costs driven by Trump's tariffs, which have made fertilizer and farming equipment more expensive. To underscore the real-world impact, Warren quoted farmers directly. One soybean farmer summed up the frustration bluntly, saying he turned on the news to learn that $20 billion of U.S. taxpayer money was being given to Argentina, his competition. The American Soybean Association echoed that anger, calling the situation overwhelmingly frustrating. If you care about how trade policy affects people beyond Washington, subscribe for more reporting like this. Warren then turned to Dr. Callahan, the nominee for Chief Agricultural Negotiator, a role that would make him the top U.S. advocate for farmers in global trade talks. She asked him directly whether bailing out Argentina while U.S. farmers struggle amounts to a betrayal of American soybean farmers. Callahan responded by speaking broadly about trade negotiations and ensuring global access to U.S. soybeans. But Warren cut in, emphasizing that time was limited and the question was straightforward. She pressed him on whether he could even acknowledge that American soybean farmers are facing serious economic trouble right now. As the exchange continued, Warren sharpened the focus. She pointed out that China has reduced purchases of U.S. soybeans and is now buying from Latin American countries. She repeatedly asked Callahan to name the country China is buying from, Argentina, tying it directly back to the bailout under discussion. Callahan avoided giving a direct answer, a moment that underscored Warren's larger point about accountability. Subscribe if you want coverage that breaks down not just what was said, but what was not said. Warren then expanded the issue beyond soybeans to cattle ranchers. She warned that the administration is also moving to raise quotas for Argentine beef imports. According to Warren, this would devastate small American ranchers while benefiting large meatpacking corporations that dominate the market. Consumers, she argued, would not see lower prices, meaning the harm would fall squarely on ranchers and rural communities. She quoted an Illinois cattle producer who called the policy a betrayal of the American rancher and said the president was acting more like the president of Argentina than the president of the United States. Once again, Warren asked for a clear answer. Would importing more Argentine beef harm small American ranchers? And once again, the nominee offered a generalized response about negotiations and market access without directly acknowledging the harm Warren described. The exchange ended without a yes or no answer, leaving a stark contrast between Warren's pointed questions and the nominee's careful, non-committal replies. What makes this moment significant is not just the back and forth, but what it reveals about competing priorities in U.S. trade policy. For farmers, trade deals are not abstract economic theories. They determine whether families can hold on to land that has been passed down for generations. When foreign bailouts and import expansions appear to come before domestic relief, it fuels a deep sense of betrayal in rural America. We will continue tracking this nomination and the broader trade policies affecting U.S. farmers and ranchers. If you want to stay informed on how these decisions shape food prices, rural economies, and global trade, be sure to subscribe.